Well, Reese, it is fantastic to have you join us on our Before You Bid fast format. This is going to be an incredible 30 minutes. And I know you've got some great insights and things to share with us from Before You Bid before we kick into the main part of the show.
Mate, really excited to get this fast format back up and running, Josh. And thanks to everyone jumping on. We cracked 20,000 listings for Before You Bid over the last 6 months. So a big milestone for us. So thank you to all our agent clients, as I said, helping us get to that milestone, and good to see buyers back out there. Josh, I know something that you concentrate on a lot, and something we're certainly putting a lot of tech effort into is identifying those buyers, downloading our reports, who have actually got something to sell as well. So we found about 30% of our people downloading our reports have something to sell after downloading the reports. A huge intent signal for those sellers. That's what we're focusing on for 2024, and it'll be great for you to set up all the agents who have logged on here for 2024 as well.
And I think one of the other great conversations too is also understanding your tech stack and what you're doing. And, Before We Bid Assist has been a big part of that in helping agents to get people who want to show their level of intent, and to get a copy of legal documentation, buy a copy of those pest and building reports, but also to tell if they need actually any help in relation to their finance side of stuff, or even actually getting an appraisal from a real estate agent. So, Reese, so great to have Before You Bid join us. We're going to jump into the main part of the show, and no doubt we're going to connect with you at the end of our session today. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show of Before You Bid's fast format. We're going to get very, very clear about what it takes to be a great agent as we go to finish off this year and get started for 2024. Without a doubt, the most important thing to remember inside of any business is that good energy is good business. And right now, more than ever before, that if you've got great energy in the way that you go to work as an individual agent, it'll change everything, because at the end of the day, it's often the energy of the salesperson that makes all the difference, not the energy of the prospect. Now, we know that now more than ever before, we are dealing with a different set of conditions. And ultimately, as these conditions continue to change, what do we do to make sure that we go to perform at our absolute best? Now, one of our conversations is to understand the forecast for what's actually happening in 2024. Louis Christopher from SQM Research has just produced his documentation on his boom and bust report on the expectations of what's actually going to be happening inside of the Australian market over the course of next year. Louis is probably one of the best researchers that we've seen from that understanding about what's actually happening inside of markets. And this is what he's actually saying, is that there's some base cases on what's going to be occurring. Basically, the biggest impactors are going to be the changes around what's happening with the cash rate. That's going to be heavily driven by what's actually occurring in terms of inflation, which is going to be heavily driven by immigration and also to the infrastructure builds that are happening across Australia. There's also the threat of an ongoing potential conversation around a Middle East oil embargo and what that could actually do to the Australian residential real estate marketplace. What he does very well is he actually has a look at a base case, an energy crisis, very strong population growth, and normalized population growth. And you can kind of get a bit of an idea that across most markets in Australia, outside of Perth and Brisbane, we are actually seeing some potential downward pressure in terms of his expectations. So our major metros of Melbourne and Sydney down somewhere between -3 to potentially a +1%. Also, in addition to that, you have a look at that's quite way across. Hobart expected to suffer a little further, and Canberra certainly expected to suffer probably the most out of any markets in the country. They expect that both Perth and Brisbane will be positive over the course of next year. So we're definitely not seeing an expectation of a 30% increase in property prices that we saw during the course of the COVID era. So make sure that you have a quick look at Louis Christopher's boom and bust report. It's a great thing to Google and to actually get some further depth and detail about what's actually happening in the marketplace and expectations for next year. Well, ultimately, we've got to ask ourselves the big questions. What is actually driving the market this year? And we know that population growth and immigration is a big part of the agenda here in Australia. What we have actually found is that naturally, Peter Costello, the former Treasurer of Australia, came out and identified that during his tenure, around 120,000 people a year were coming to Australia. And over the course of the last 12 months, we've actually seen over 500,000 people coming to Australia. Naturally, there's huge infrastructure builds going on, whether or not it be the new airport in Sydney, or also the Cedar Rail Loop project here in Melbourne. There's a huge conversation. What that's naturally doing is pulling a lot of builders off some of the residential building sites to actually go and build essential infrastructure for Australia. And also, too, there's another major trend, which is what we've got to call the baby boomers. And baby boomers are naturally closer to the sunset than they are the sunrise. And that's actually getting them access to their superannuation and ultimately spending by those baby boomers. So they're not going to wait for market conditions to improve, to get better, or to get worse. They're ultimately in a position they'll need to make a decision to do something relatively quickly. And also, too, what we've got to call the normalization of interest rates. So what we do find is that initially people get really worried about what's happening at an interest rate level as soon as that is announced, but they soon adapt to be able to change their lifestyle and their living circumstances quite quickly towards the interest rates of the day. We will note that during the last few weeks, the Australian Financial Review has been very aggressive in pushing an agenda from the RBA about a potential rate rise in early December and again in February to try to slow everyone up from maybe purchasing too much on Black Friday today as we do today's recording. What's destabilizing the marketplace? Obviously, the conversation of a cost of living crisis. We've moved from an era of free money to actually having to pay for the debt that we have. Also, in addition to that, the geopolitical events, those items that might be happening overseas in other marketplaces, causing issues potentially with global oil prices. And actually, you could imagine if petrol prices hit $3.50 or $4 a litre by Christmas, then that would certainly change the way that consumers feel about splashing the cash out there in market. We've also then too got the conversation around media sentiment. It tends to be a little bit more negative around property right now, but also to what I go to call end of year-itis. And how is that the common place where you might show a buyer 5 or 6 houses and then you go, hey, what do you think? And they go, you know what? I know you're a great agent, but I think we might just wait till next year. So you'll start to get a little bit of a challenge in getting buyers to commit. Also too, there is the conversation around holding costs. The most recent 0.25% has added about $175 to the monthly mortgage cost for any consumer. So I've got to make a decision about whether or not they're eating out or eating at home. And also in addition to that, government policy with additional property taxes. We have seen some significant property taxes come in to the Victorian marketplace. We believe that they will be replicated in the New South Wales marketplace, with a report a few weeks back identifying the New South Wales government has worked out that there's 60,000 properties in the short-term rental market, better known as Airbnb and stays, which they wish to move to the full-time rental market because that's a really important mechanism to be able to make sure that all of these new immigrants that are coming to Australia actually have somewhere to live. And also to the reversal of what we go to call short-term COVID trends, which is that whole idea that I might have bought my great weekender, maybe down in the Southern Highlands, and I've made that decision that it's going to be a little bit too expensive to be able to afford the petrol to go down there on the weekends. So I'm going to make the decision to go and sell that particular asset. So certainly any of those regional locations can be feeling the challenge that all of a sudden the metro buyers are disappearing, and it now will only be the locals that will be upgrading. And the locals are definitely much harsher on price than some of that metro money has been over the previous years. So now we've got a bit of an understanding about that in market. What is very clear is that ultimately interest rates have been going down between 2014 all the way down to 2022. We know that during the era of 2022, it was the free money era. We bought boats and cars and houses and all sorts of stuff. And naturally, now you're actually climbing what they go to call the wall of worry. That wall of worry, consumers start to get worried about whether or not they should be buying, whether or not they should be selling, whether or not they should be doing a transaction. And actually, you've seen a significant number of interest rate increases over that period. And it looks quite alarming when you go to have a quick look at it on a 10-year period. But what actually happens when you go and start to think about a longer-term impact, it is actually changing how much people can borrow. So in January of 2022, I was able to borrow over $1,085,000. That same borrower, as at the beginning of November 2023, can now only borrow $596,000. So that's effectively, somewhere around about that close to 500,000-ish mark, that borrowers are actually off the mark. And that actually is a very significant amount of money in terms of how much they can or can't borrow. So when I'm working with sellers that say, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, when you have a quick look at that graph, it does actually get you to realize that naturally the amount of money that people can borrow is significantly changing, which is why we are seeing potentially in some pockets of the world, a decrease in property prices. And that's kind of alarming because we just saw some of the latest information in the last 24 hours come out that we've actually technically reached the highs in some of our marketplaces. So we've now actually reversed all of the losses that we actually made over the course of the most recent decline and bottoming of those market cycles. Now, why this is an important conversation is that to be a phenomenal agent this year, you've got to make sure that in 2024, you start to think differently. And today we're going to really focus on that. And that's ultimately about thinking that whole idea that when there is a sale, the first key question that comes into my mind, well, what did that particular property sale make? How does that now impact one of my current campaigns? So if I have two properties at $1 million and one all of a sudden sells for 1.1, that obviously impacts the campaign. But if one of those properties that was on $1 million now sells for $950,000, then obviously that's going to pull back the sale price potential of that existing asset. It is also important to think, how does it now go to impact all of my previous market appraisals? And combined with that, who is actually the person that bought it? If I know, for example, that Hannah actually went to go and purchase that particular property, that's a bit of a challenge because was I expecting her to be one of the buyers on my next campaign? And this is a really important conversation because if she was, I need to be having better quality conversations with my sellers today to say to them, hey, I'm a little bit concerned, guys, because naturally we've just lost our best buyer, Hannah. So what are we going to do to make sure that we go to maximize that sale price? Do they have something more immediate to sell? And that's a really important conversation that if you're in a position that they've just bought the 4-bedder and they now have a 3-bedder to sell, then that may be the conversation around what you've got to do to go to find those particular sellers. The seller who actually just sold, have they now bought? And this is what great estate agency is always about, identifying, well, hang on a second, that particular Hannah person has actually just sold. Now I want to know, is she actually in the position that she needs to go and buy? Or are they now what we're going to call our most urgent buyer that is in the marketplace? And we're certainly talking about that, about the understanding of those people that are buying pest and building reports are definitely in the position that they're more likely to do a transaction in a much shorter period of time. And also to have a higher intent to actually be selling an existing property to naturally be trading. So there's some really good insights that you can gain from that. Once you've got that checklist in play, you've got to realize we've got a very short period of time over the course of the next 21 days. And where are the biggest opportunities that we're going to be seeing inside of the business? And the biggest one, without a doubt for me, is to go and ring every market appraisal that you've ever done, not just this year's, but every market appraisal, because holding costs have changed, funding costs have changed, borrowing capacities changed, people's desires have changed, and also to reversal of some of those short-term trends may well mean that people's plans have changed. They might not be looking to build or to develop that particular site, or maybe they're in a position that they've lost a job, unfortunately. Maybe there's been some changes in their own personal circumstances. So what I like to do is I like to get on the phone and have a conversation with people and say, hey, look, would you be looking to do something this year, or will next year be okay? The window is closing. If you'd like to do something this year, we've probably only got a week to 2 weeks to actually go and make it happen. And this is really important when you're working with your sellers. Naturally, we have found that some people have found some panic selling or distressed sellers who ultimately rang directly after that Melbourne Cup interest rate rise on the Wednesday and said, hey, we need to sell this year. And so it is actually still possible that you might get those last 1 or 2 listings, although we are starting to turn our entire focus to actually listing for 2024 campaigns. Now, naturally, one of the key things is to get on the phone and to ring every single one of your past clients. Now, Alexander Phillips identified in one of our recent podcasts that 10% of all of his listings at the most current moment are in a position that they were bought by that vendor in the course of the last 12 months. Now, some of the stats that we've seen more on a national basis is around 14% of all listings listed in the last 30 days in Australia were actually listed when the vendor had actually bought the property within the course of the last 3 years. So what I'd be doing right now is I'd literally be getting a list of every single person who has bought from you in the last 3 years. And I'd just be picking up the phone and calling all of those people. Hi, Hannah, just a quick call to say, thanks so much for buying through me. Let's sort of quickly check in to see how are things with you and how's the house? And naturally, that will raise a number of challenges. Hey, Josh, we've got a job relocation. We're in a position we can't afford to hold the house. We need to do those things. And so ultimately, that should generate lots and lots of leads for you. But also to understanding that literally we are filled with plenty of opportunity in the real estate industry, and many of us actually miss those opportunities. And so I'm going to ask you a very simple thing. If you wrote down the heading November, and now I want you to write down the address of every single property that you've been out to appraise so far this month. And I think what you realize very quickly is you actually don't know those addresses. And so then I'm going to ask you the next question. Okay, well, out of all the appraisals that you actually went to, how many of them would technically need to sell in order to buy? And this is about where great agencies about getting into the logistics of the consumer and really understanding what their next steps may well be. So Hannah, let me ask you a quick question. Let's say that we find you the perfect house to go and buy. I just want to know, what are your plans? Are you in a position that you've got some cash and some savings that you can use? Are you in a position that potentially that you might just maybe buy with a very long settlement and hopefully quickly rush yours to market to sell? Are you in a position that naturally, ultimately, you may just use some bridging finance from the bank, or you're open to us maybe getting a copy of the contract of sale, getting some pest and building reports done, getting everything done as though you're live to go to market, and then naturally taking the property to market as soon as you've found what you want? We'll launch it, get 8 or 9 buyers through, reduce all of the friction so they can buy a copy of those reports, buy the house, and then naturally move yourself into a position that then you can go and make an offer on the one that you'd like to go and purchase. And what that leads to is to really think about, where we're at as agents. And what I understand without a doubt is that business is without a doubt the greatest platform for change. So as we close out 2023 and we get ready for 2024, where are the big things that we can be doing that will make a huge difference? And I would say to you that your business is a set of systems that absolutely guarantees a successful result regardless of the market conditions. So what we know is that some agents are saying, well, Josh, how do I do real estate better next year? Well, the first thing I'd say to you is that unconditional is one of the easiest ways to transact real estate. Traditionally, that is done by the auction sale method. In some states and territories, you're able to do it in alternate means. But the reality of it is that we love unconditional business. And really, it's about removing the friction in a transaction. And that's where I think the transparency of pest and building reports have been a really important part, but also to strata reports if that's appropriate on that particular property. But it's now also too about documenting what it is that you do. So let's say, for example, that you're going out to a listing presentation. What actually happens next? So what I like to do is I like to actually confirm that I'm okay to send a calendar invite. I like to send a calendar invite for 60 minutes so the client knows that we're going to be there. That way it prevents them from probably putting another appointment in with another real estate agent, maybe 20 minutes into my presentation. In addition to that, I then like to send them an email of confirmation. And in that email of confirmation, I like a very simple link where they can watch a short video for 1 minute about who I am, what I do, and how I fundamentally help. And then beyond that, then moving into a position that then they receive an SMS with a little link for a short little 30-second survey, which explains a little bit more about them and their situation. So I can get that pre-briefing before I even turn up into that listing presentation. Now, this is important because then when I turn up to the listing presentation, I want to make sure I've driven around the streets to just identify if there's any listing sales, things I need to be aware of that maybe Google Maps can't show me. It might give me a bit of an idea about what's going on in that local area. And that's going to be really important. So I'm turning up on time and ready to be able to go and transact and to list that particular property. What I've learned very clearly is that you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to go and surf. And really, the easiest thing to do right now, and I'm thinking about great work in the course of the next 21 days, is to review all of your existing listings and just ask a very simple question. Is there anything that needs a change in marketing, a change in price, or a change in sale method in order to get it sold this Christmas? Mr. and Mrs. Owner, if it was me, I just would not want to be wondering. Obviously, we've got the threat of additional interest rate increases. The forecasts are very clear from SQM research. My view is that potentially selling today is going to be the very best thing that we can be doing. And I'd be making a move earlier on price or an earlier move on marketing, or potentially even quickly whipping it into an auction to try to get some real buyer emphasis in order to be able to go and get that particular property sold. Now, why that is important is it's also too about understanding how you find those buyers that are unlocked. And particularly for some of our regional clients, and for those people that are finding some challenges, then ultimately this is where a new concept called 40/40 really helps. It was the subject of one of our coaching tips earlier this week. And actually what we do is that whenever you get a 4-bedroom home, as an example, we go into your database and we go and identify who are the 20 sellers or previous appraisals that we've done of 4-bedroom homes, and who are the 20 sellers or previous appraisals that we've done on 3-bedroom homes. Naturally, we pick up the phone, we go and ring those 4-bedroom homeowners and say, hey, Jenny, it's Josh. I thought I'd quickly let you know we've actually listed a property very similar to yours. That particular property will be going to market. And in the course of the next 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, when that property sells, I'm going to give you a quick call and let you know about that sales result, if that would be okay. Interesting enough, that's going to be a decision point for you, because if we have 1, 2, or 3 buyers left over, I'm going to be looking for any instruction from you on what you'd like us to do with those particular buyers and whether or not you had any decision about potentially selling. Again, when the property actually sells, hey, Jenny, it's Josh. I thought I'd give you a quick call. 12 Smith Street is now actually sold. We've got 3 buyers that are left over on that particular home. And I just thought I'd quickly check in just to see what you'd like me to do with them. Again, we do the same with the 3-bedroom appraisals that we've done. Hey, Phil, it's Josh. I thought I'd give you a very quick courtesy call. We've got a 4-bedroom that we've got listed. We'd love you to come and have a look at this, because this could be the perfect upgrader for you. Naturally, if Phil comes and has a look at it, makes the decision to purchase, and ultimately that helps him to progress his 3-bedroom home to market. An exceptional concept, because again, when we go to sell the property, hey, Phil, Jones Street sold for this. And that actually gives Phil then confidence about what the trade over cost would actually be for him to step up into that next style of property. Now, why this is important is to now also to get back to better quality buyer matching. So what great agents are doing, if you're finding it a bit thin on the ground on a couple of particular pieces of stock, actually go and have a look and say, okay, great, I've got this 3-bed, I can't sell it. What are the other 3-bedders that we've actually sold this year? Let's go and have a look at all of the people that inquired, all the people that actually physically inspected. Let's go and have a ring through of all of those people. Very basic phone call conversation with them. Hi, Hannah, it's Josh. I thought I'd give you a quick call. We had you down that you're looking to buy. Did you still have an appetite to purchase? The reason for today's call is very simple. We've got a cracking property at number 13 Smith Street. I'd love to get you through it. Is there any chance we could do tomorrow at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock? Just some little things that you can do to allow yourself to get more momentum in your agency now. Now, this is one of the great things that we do, and actually Reese has helped us to build this out a little bit. Whenever we're working on a particular listing, we just say, okay, great. How many days on market has that particular listing got? How many inquiries have we actually received on that particular one? How many inspections have we got? How many second inspections? But who are the people that are showing digital intent by buying a copy of that pest inspection, that building inspection, or getting a copy of that strata report? How many are requesting a copy of the legal documentation, the contract? And how many of those people have actually then moved into offers? And what you'll find is that any campaign that is stuck is usually stuck at the point where those inspections are not moving into second inspections. And certainly those inspections are not moving into that digital intent of people buying copies of pest and build reports. So this is a very important tool that you need to have in play to be able to show the intent of what consumers are actually doing. And there's a set of benchmark numbers on what you might expect inside of a particular campaign. So day 7, a certain number of inquiries, inspection, second appointments, and maybe a couple of pest and build reports. And it's interesting because in my area of Balmain, where I happen to live, if I see something that I really like, I'll often buy a copy of that pest and building report before I'd even go to the open for inspection, particularly if it's a cracker listing in exactly the right pocket. Now, this is an important conversation because what I'd say to you over the course of the next 21 days, you need a list of great work to do. So here are some things that you could do to really get momentum and motivation on the inside of your business. Number 1, use urgency to drive that great work. And this is a really important thing. Put some deadlines on it. And so what I do is I'd say, right, have a listings target for how many campaigns you'll be launching this January. Now, we know that there are businesses that are in a position that they're getting a number of properties going live to market. We have a number of clients launching 100 or 150 properties in and around Boxing Day or New Year's Day. Many of those clients have made the decision to get a pest and building report on every single one of those properties before they go live to market. But the basic idea is just actually have that listings target. So if you said, Josh, I want to get 10 listings, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then at the bottom, holidays. Now, all you got to do is over the course of the next 21 days, try to get to that target of getting those 10 properties listed. The moment that you do is the moment that you can actually go on holidays. So learn how to get paid on results, not just on time. The next conversation is getting really clear about what's your philosophy for business. And that's really about a couple of basic questions. How do we actually go to generate our leads? So have our best lead sources being buyer work or past market appraisals or past clients. I know a number of people sent me some messages and some questions prior to today's session. And a number of those questions are about how we go to generate leads. Well, you really need to understand that. Spend some time with your principal and having a good conversation around what's worked in the past, whether or not that's buyer work, having great conversations to go through people that might have bought copies of pest and building reports because naturally they're more likely to be a high intent seller, but also doing some of those things like the 40-40, calling back through previous market appraisals, calling back through archive landlords, doing 10-10-20 around transactions that are actually happening on the inside of your marketplace. The secondary part is being very clear about what you do to go and win your particular business. Now, winning business is maybe even turning up the listing presentation. Hannah, lovely to see you today. Let me ask you a very simple question. How can I help? And in under a couple of words, they say, look, Josh, I've got a job relocation, moving to New South. Excellent. And Hannah, let me ask you a quick question. Have you already selected your agent? Well, Josh, that's why you're here. We'd like to go with you. Imagine if at question 2, inside the listing presentation, you're in a position, you already identified that you are the listing agent, you are ready to rock and roll. And I often get a lot of people say, Josh, that'll never happen. Well, it doesn't happen if you don't ask. What that then leads to is that then thinking about what you do to actually go to sell your listings. And this is a really important part. Remove every part of friction. Try to be in a position that you are conditionless and get yourself in a position that you can drive the urgency of the buyer. And these are some really simple things that you might then do inside of your business. So what are the little things that you do that get big results? And I always say this to people, this is just a little thing that we do that generates a really big result. What we do Tuesday launches. All of our properties are launched on the major real estate websites on Tuesdays for midweek opens. The benefit of that in the first week, even in our regional areas, we do that midweek opens so that by the time we actually get to Saturday, we've already got a buyer coming back for a second inspection at that first Saturday open house. One of the little things that we do that gets us a big result was you have a tape measure at all open houses. We put it on the kitchen bench. It's amazing to see what happens to Reese. And all of a sudden, he sees a tape measure being pulled out over a fridge. He thinks that person's about to go and buy the house I'd like to go and consume. And naturally, that moves him forward into wanting to go into an offer process. One of the other little things that we do, we've spoken about today, the 40 to 40 market appraisal work, identifying those buyers, sellers that would like to step up from the 3-bedder into the 4-bedder, but also to identifying the 4-bedroom sellers that may actually now come to market. And naturally, if you can get someone to say they're going to come to market, when you sell that 4-bedder, you can now actually do a buyer transfer and transfer those buyers from that campaign to the next campaign that you're actually looking after. Buyer transfers are a big part of the business. We had a great conversation with some leading agents today. And what they're going to be doing is that naturally, when a property is actually sold and they go to put up the just sold on their socials and certainly on their Instagram, now that this one's sold, there are 3 other properties for you to consider. I think that that's a really smart idea to be able to transfer those buyers from one location to the next. And then maybe even go to think about building out your marketing campaign for 2024. So you're very clear about what success looks like into the future so that you can make sure that you've got that high level of success. Review what actually worked this year. How did you meet the clients? And what did you do to actually win those particular listings? So you might have met someone because you took some names and numbers at an open for inspection just prior to an auction, and you actually got them to come to market because you kept on ringing them about listed and sold results in your area. This is a really important conversation to really drill it down so you can further enhance what you do as a great agent. I think that that's been a great little conversation. We're right there on time, as no doubt, as Reese, as you come back onto the screen. Just to see that there's some really good stuff in there to be a great real estate agent. Lots of digital intent, lots of understanding how you move the puck, iron out the friction, and make it easier for consumers. Reese, what were some of your favourite parts there and some things that you'd go and do something with straight away after being to today's session?
Yeah, well, that 40-40 really resonated. I know top agent up in Queensland, he sells about 200 a year. He'll actually print off everyone who's downloaded a building and pest inspection for that type of property. So if it's a 4-bed, 1-bath, or say, look, here's the 35 who have downloaded a building and pest inspection off me looking for this the last 12 months. And they're the 35 I'm getting to your first open home. So he says it's a great way of just getting their eyeballs to see. They see names, they see numbers, they see, intent. So they list with him, and it's a way he converts at a high rate.
Well, Reese, I don't think we're disappointed. It definitely is called fast format for a reason. We will get you a copy of the key slides and also too a copy of the recording for anyone that has watched today so that you can re-watch at any one point in time. Guys, if you've got any questions at all, then certainly do feel free to reach out to the Before You Bid team. We've got some fantastic technology. The BYB Assist has been particularly good, getting those pest and building reports for any of your campaigns that you're going to be launching into January 2024. Please make sure that you do some great work over the course of the next 21 days. And Reese, I don't know about you, but if we don't get to see you guys face to face between now and the end of the year, please make sure that you have a very safe Christmas, a great start into next year. And we look forward to doing some more work with you at a training level, but also too in being able to see you face to face in a number of the sessions we'll be running across the country. Thanks, Reese, for being a part of Fast Format today. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great Christmas.
Cheers.